Fantastic. So I'll hand over to Graham. Graham, welcome. Thanks very much. And we're looking forward to hearing about your challenge.
Excellent. Thanks for having us. So yeah, I've got a few slides. I thought to give a bit of background, I can run through crowdfunding, crowdfunder, who we are, what we do, a little bit of information about that, and also, you know, we've set a challenge, but I thought maybe have a little look at the sorts of things that are happening on our platform, sort of day in, day out, so that, you know, maybe you've got some other ideas of things that you want to explore further, or things that interest you, and then I'll go a little bit into the challenge, that one of the many challenges that myself and Aaron is also from Crowdfunder on the call here, that we are, you know, looking at not getting to on our roadmaps and and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts and ideas and all that sort of thing. But I'll dive into the slides and we'll get going. So with a little bit of luck, you will see my screen. You'll find the present button. Okay. So hopefully, can you see my screen? Yep, excellent. So there we are. So Crowdfunder, we're a crowdfunding platform. So crowdfunding, just very briefly, and forgive me, this is teaching you all stuff you know, but essentially we have people coming onto our site, individuals, organizations, businesses, you name it, they come onto our site to raise money to make their ideas happen. And there's lots of different types of crowdfunding that sort of take place. So and we've sort of labeled them here. On the left-hand side, we've got donations. So you might be familiar, I'm sure you are familiar with sites like Just Giving and GoFundMe. In the sort of rewards space, where generally you get something in return for the donation that you make towards a project or a business or organization. You've got Kickstarter and Indiegogo, to the big players in that area. There's also a thing called community shares, probably a little bit niche, but this is sort of community-owned businesses, and we've got organizations like Ethics who are working in that space. We've got peer-to-peer lending, where people are lending money and expecting to get a return on that investment, and you have sites like Funding Circle who are doing that. And then you've got the equity crowdfunding, so the likes of Crowdcube and Exeter and Cedars, where you're buying shares in a business. And where we fit in is sort of on this left-hand side here. So we have the ability for projects to raise funds through donations. We also have rewards crowdfunding. We also do a little bit of community shares as well. So we're sort of on this side of that diagram, if you like. And we also work very closely with Crowdcube. They're a sister company of ours. So we've got quite a nice spread across the sector. And so we're the #1 crowdfunding platform in the UK, and we're based in Newquay in C-Space, which is a sort of shared workspace run by the Real Ideas organisation. And I guess we're a team of about 50 people. Just over half of us are based in Newquay, and then we've got a small satellite site in Bridport, which is mainly design and marketing that comes out there. Then we've also got people dotted, well, now people are dotted all over the country, aren't they? So we've got people based in London and a team in Scotland and that sort of stuff. And our purpose is Crowdfunder exists to tackle society's challenges by making ideas happen. So we have a really interesting mix of projects that come up with all sorts of different ideas to tackle things that matter to them, and obviously the people are coming along supporting the ideas that they really care about. A few numbers. So we've been, I'm trying to remember how long we've been going for, probably about 5 or 6 years, something like that. But really, things have really accelerated for us, particularly since the start of the pandemic. We've had an awful lot of online fundraising. Well, a lot of fundraising has moved online, and so crowdfunding's been a really big part of that. So through the platform, we've had over 133 million pounds going through the platform, 320,000 projects and 2 million supporters to date. I think the interesting thing is sort of on a daily basis, we're probably having around about 250 projects. That's people with ideas, putting them up on the platform, seeking funding. Not all of them end up going live, but you know, we have those ideas coming in. And then on the other side, we have the people who are supporting those ideas. So we'd expect to see around about 3,000 transactions taking place every day of people supporting the projects that are on the platform. And it's not just the crowd that you know, we've got a two-sided business model, I suppose, if you like. We've got projects on the one side who are seeking to raise funds. Now on the other side, we've got people who are supporting those projects. And it's not just the crowd who are supporting those projects. We also have partnerships with local authorities. So Cornwall Council, we do a lot of work with them. The GLA, the Mayor of London, and various other local authorities around the country who want to support, you know, ideas that are happening in their area. We also work with charities and grant givers. So you've got organisations like Sport England, and really exciting. We're just about to launch a new fund with Sport England, £7 million fund to give to grassroots sports groups. So really exciting stuff going on in that space. And also we work with corporate partners. So with the likes of Aviva, we run the Aviva Community Fund, which is Aviva's part of Aviva's CSR activities, where they're supporting small local charities. And then also people like Nectar. We've just launched a program with Nectar where your Nectar points, which you get from oh, some way to come in. Okay, Nectar, where you get your Nectar points, then you can, instead of just, you know, spending them on things, you can actually donate those to charities. So but they're all supported as well, just like the crowd. So I guess our perfect project on Crowdfunder comes in, they receive, you know, perhaps they get a little bit of money from the local authority, they get a little bit of corporate or charity money, and then also they're getting the crowd's money as well. So you've got a real nice mix of funding. And you know, the local authorities and the corporates, they like to see, you know, that crowd element taking place, because it validates the ideas. It validates the ideas the groups are putting forward. And the other interesting thing that we're seeing is, you know, there are lots of groups that are very good at filling in grant applications. And so they're the ones that are perhaps getting the funding. But this opens it up. This changes the game a little bit. And you know, we're finding that particularly with the likes of Sport England, they're now reaching groups that they wouldn't have reached beforehand, who wouldn't have, you know, filled in the grant application, etc. And I'm just gonna, I sort of alluded to the sort of breadth of different types of projects. So I just went through the site before the call, and I just pulled out a few of the projects that are fundraising at the moment that hopefully gives you a sense of I suppose the interesting data that we have available to us. So you know, and it's interesting, one of our challenges is categorizing all these different types of projects, but we have projects like this one, which is you know, it's some parents have set this up. Alex has set this up, and he's looking to raise money. His daughter has got an incurable disease. They want to help fund research, you know, into that disease, which hopefully will benefit their daughter Lexi in the future. And this project, it launched a couple of weeks ago, and it absolutely flew. Lots of lots of lots of the transactions were coming through Facebook. The project was shared on Facebook, etc., etc. Lots of transactions coming through there, and it's interesting, I suppose, the different types of personal causes that that we've been seeing, and how those change over time, I guess. Moving on to charity and fundraising. So at the minute, we are working with UNICEF on their Vaccinate campaign, Give the World a Shot, which has raised over £5 million so far, £5.5 million. And that's a campaign to vaccinate 2 billion people worldwide in countries where there isn't the same vaccination program that we have in the UK. And also, alongside the charities fundraising, we have the fundraisers. So we've got people riding bikes, running the marathon, etc., and raising funds for these charities on our platform. And again, it's quite interesting. At the start of the pandemic, we saw lots of PPE types of projects taking place, and interesting now that perhaps the vaccination programs around the globe are starting to appear as the needs and concerns of the needs and concerns of the nation have changed over the course of the pandemic, which I think that's really interesting. I keep going because we have a lot of businesses crowdfunding. Here's one that launched yesterday, actually, and staggering effort. They've raised over £50,000 in a day, really. And this is a business going out to its customer base and saying, we're in trouble. We need some help. Can you support us? And again, I suppose prior to the pandemic, most of our business, the sorts of business projects we were supporting were startup businesses. People who had an idea, who wanted to test the market, who wanted to, in a way, gain some evidence for their idea, for their business idea, so that they could then, imagine if you're going to visit, you've got an idea, and you set up a crowdfund, and you can go to the bank then and say, look, I've got this idea. 100 people have already supported me. 100 people have said this is a good idea, and I always thought that there was one ages ago when we first started, which was a bakery, and they'd sold 100 loaves of bread, let's say, before they'd even launched their business. So they already knew that this was a good idea, and there was demand in the market for them to launch their business. They could then take that information to the bank and say, hey guys, look, we've already got a customer base, we've got a proof of concept, can you lend us some money, etc., etc. But more recently, there's much more established businesses that have been crowdfunding with us, and and an awful lot of the hospitality, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic, were crowdfunding, to keep their businesses afloat, and asking their customers for support in return for vouchers to get something at a later date and all that sort of thing. You may have seen the Skinner's Brewery one, actually, in Cornwall, which was a great success a couple of months back. And then another type of project that we have is sort of politics and activism. Again, this has changed quite a lot, I guess, over time. If I go back to when Brexit was happening, we had the Led by Donkeys campaign, sticking billboards up all around the nation, trying to hold MPs to account by replaying the tweets that they'd put out perhaps a few years ago that contradicted what they were saying currently. We've had the Trump baby blimp, which was flown, I think it was in Trafalgar Square, and right through to sort of political parties crowdfunding. So the Green Party do an awful lot of crowdfunding for their local MPs. The SNP, I think, you know, a massive number of the SNP candidates used crowdfunding to raise money to run their campaigns. And I guess more, you know, this is the one that's moving at the moment, which is a challenge against COVID passes from Big Brother Watch. So really interesting, again, the sort of diversity of different types of projects, what's being supported, what's not being supported on the platform. So yeah, as I say, we've got lots of data, there's lots of different things happening there. And I'd very much like you take away what we like to explore, and you know, I'd love to have conversations with you guys around, you know, what excites you within some of that stuff that I've been telling you there. I'll just dive in now to the challenge. Oh, I've got a note saying my internet connection's up unstable. Hopefully you can still hear me. So I was talking a while ago, and we're talking about one of the things that we want to do in the sea space where we live in Newquay is it's a, you know, it's public, it's a workspace, there's a cafe there and all that sort of thing, and we're really keen to sort of showcase what is happening on Crowdfunder right now. What's, you know, we've got lots of transactions happening, we've got lots of projects being supported from all over the country, and we wanted to make sort of public facing visualization about, you know, what's going on, and really showcasing the fact that, you know, as I've been talking, there's probably been, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 pledges that have been made against different sorts of projects. And I mean, who knows, when we get a big one, all of a sudden it can just go through the roof. And a few weeks ago we had the stables in which was in London, a disabled riding school that were being moved off their property. They had to raise £1 million in order to buy it off the landlord, and you know, that just overnight, it had been running for a good few weeks, and then all of a sudden it just took off, and it got some celebrity endorsement. It was flying around Twitter, it got on BBC News. All of a sudden lots of activity was taking place. So how do we visualize these sorts of things that are going on Crowdfunder right now? And myself and Aaron, we've been talking about, there's loads of sort of dashboarding tools that refresh every minute. I think they really capture the sort of, you know, the thing now that's happening now, and it doesn't really, you know, seeing something change every 5 minutes isn't, I suppose, that inspiring or engaging for the public that we want to talk to. The second part of it is the trends that are occurring, how we classify the project. I mean, it's sort of self-classification process at the moment. One adds a project and they tell us who they are and what they're doing. Of course, when they can choose lots of options, the savvy ones among them go, well, I'm all of those things, so I can reach the biggest audience possible. It'd be really interesting. You know, I talked about some of those trends that, you know, like the businesses, for example, where we were doing startups, then we started doing more established businesses in response to the COVID, how those trends sort of ebb and flow and over the course of time, and perhaps put the political and activism projects, are they giving us a sense of the mood of the nation, or what the nation cares about, what are people supporting? So I think there's something really interesting around you know, classifying the projects and being able to identify those trends as well. So we've put together a few different data sources, which you can have a look at. I'm guessing we send this around to all the attendees a bit later on. Around pledge data, I've added in some supporter comment data and project description data as well. So all this will be available for you guys to have a look at. And if we're okay for time, I can dive in and just have a look at some of that. So yeah, we've just made some data sets of the pledge data, updates every 5 minutes, and it's sort of table of all the pledges made in the last 15 minutes. And we've got some pledge types, so whether it's the crowd, whether it's one of these partners, the local authorities, or that's making the pledge, the project that's being supported. We've got a timestamp there, the amounts being pledged, and where the pledge is coming from, so a lat long as well, so we can see, you know, are we getting an activity in a certain area around a certain project, or is it national, or, you know, does it spread out from a certain point? I think there's some really interesting things that might be going on there. And again, we've got the project data very similar. So this is the table of all the projects that have been supported in the last 15 minutes. So again, we've got a location of the project. So perhaps we can look at, you know, where the project is, where the back is local to the project, or does it not matter? And then I thought this might be quite an interesting thing to have a look at. So this around the supporters. So when you support a project, you have the opportunity to leave a comment, and so, you know, there might be some quite interesting things to discover around what sorts of comments people are leaving. This one is the challenge against COVID, and obviously they're not very happy with Boris in the comment that they've left here. And then I've sort of just done a big sort of data dump, if you like, of the project description data for all projects that have sort of been active, if you like, in the last 18 months or so. And here we've got some date fields. We've got a title for this, Bob Minger, where they're located, how much they raised, some links to the pages, and then we've got some of the text from the project. So every project has a name, a short description of what they want to do, but then they've got a much bigger text, if you like, that's the project description. That yeah, if you have a look on crowdfunding, you'll sort of see how that's all pieced together. And that's it. So send this round a bit later on. And yeah, that's me, Graham. Aaron's also on the call. And just a quick note to say we are recruiting at the moment. So if anyone's interested in some data work, then do drop us a line in touch. We'd love to speak to you. And I'll go over the questions there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. That was really, really interesting. Aaron, was there anything that you wanted to add in addition to that?
No, I think Graham covered that pretty well. There's just tons of data. That's the key thing. I think there's almost too much data for us to sort of deal with on our own and do all the things we want to do. So it'd be great to hear people's ideas around the kind of things we could do from a data sciencey point of view. We haven't managed to look into yet.
Sure. Let's. I've got lots of questions, but I'll kind of restrain myself. Anyone from the anyone who's joined in, anyone want to ask any questions? Either raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself. And if you feel shy, you can type it in the chat and I'll ask for you. I'll kick off with a question. So it's really, I think one of the most important points you made was that when people pledge towards a cause, in some ways, it's potentially more meaningful than just the multitudes of opinion polls that fly around social media, because by pledging, you've got skin in the game. You've given some money, really. So that can be interpreted as having quite a significant kind of weight to that. So I think it's quite powerful, the idea of modeling, where is the nation in terms of the causes it's interested in, what it cares about, and also what's not getting funded as well. So I think that's really interesting. My question was going to be, what kind of things have you tried so far in terms of real-time visualization? Have you tried experiments, or have you thought about doing things which can potentially inform others on this chat who might be interested in having a go themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, we've made a few dashboards. I mean, we use a dashboarding tool called Redash, which is sort of nice and simple to use. And we have created stuff where we're updating every 5 minutes and that sort of thing. I didn't feel that was sad because you got a number and 5 minutes later you got another number, and does it change? I didn't, I sort of missed the sort of interactivity of it. I mean, we have talked to myself and Aaron have talked about creating that thing whereby that sort of ticker thing where the number of pledges is going up, if you like, or a map where pledges coming in as they're being dropped. I think one of the interesting things that we discussed with all this going to be really doing actual real time. Maybe we could put in some delays. Maybe we could showing the data sort of 5 minutes ago, but and doing it that way. But that's sort of as far as we got just thinking about it, really.
Yeah, no, that's I think there's a lot of challenges, aren't there, in terms of making this as real time as possible. I think one of the other areas of challenge is the classification of the kinds of pledges. And clearly there are lots of kind of free open source tools to do that. Is your experience that they work fine, or actually they don't work quite well enough? And part of this challenge is to try and improve on that kind of automatic clustering, which you can, copy and paste some code and then have that capability. Do you find that actually there's something particularly kind of challenging or difficult about this problem domain?
I think for us, all those products, they're quite unique and they're, quite diverse, and you can start looking at words, but words in one context mean one thing, but they in another context they might mean something else. So it's not. We've looked at the user classifying, asking the user what they think the project is, and we come up with all sorts of challenges there. People think, I can play the system by saying I'm all of these projects, all of these types, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's not something we've done mass amounts of work on, but the sheer volume of being supported on a daily basis, I think, makes it, I guess, quite daunting. In some respects.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you want to add anything to that?
So I guess we've sort of touched on some natural language processing stuff, haven't we? We've sort of tested it in places, but we haven't really nailed a good way to handle, I guess, all of the data, and we don't have a cloud data warehouse yet and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of challenges from our point of view of how to sort of what to do with that data. We can stick some data in the top of that sort of, like you say, that bit of code, but how do we use it in the day-to-day? What do we use it to actually inform about the projects or about the pledges or about the comments and that kind of thing? I think that's the challenge as well.
Yeah. Where is the data? I mean, how is it entering crowdfunder at the moment? So clearly when somebody creates a pledge and it's on the website, so it's sat in a database somewhere, and then when somebody contributes, makes a pledge, that's also recorded somewhere. So is that where it's currently stays, or have you transformed it in some sense beyond that?
I mean, that's where it currently stays, and then we do analysis straight into there. So on just pulled out, created a few queries, pulled out the database and made that available by the read API there.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I might have a go at this myself, actually. I think it's really, really interesting. I think from kind of previous projects, I think particularly with the scale of this, one approach that we followed before is that because there's uncertainty around the accuracy of classification, and there's a lot of data potentially, or high rates of data, the approach that I've seen work quite well is where you start with a very skeletal solution. So you say, okay, we're just going to sample the data, say, 1 out of every 100 or whatever it is. And then we're going to analyze the content to classify it, and we'll only include or view those which have a high level of confidence about what it is. So you don't pollute, you don't get a misrepresentation. And then once that's up and running and is partially useful because it's real data, you can then iterate on that. And then you can, over a period of weeks and months and even years, gradually improve your natural language analysis as your data pipelines get better and faster, or you can improve them, but at least you build up from a thread that goes from A to Z, rather than the other approach, which is to try and build the all singing, all dancing up front, which is quite costly. And if you get it wrong, you've invested a lot in the wrong solution. So I think I've seen that work, that kind of approach. So for example, in a government context, you can imagine there's lots of people coming through the borders. There's generating quite a lot of data. So that approach and growing a solution from a thin wire to a full fat connection works really well. And what it means is that every stage of its maturity, you can understand how much you believe the results, rather than saying, okay, we've got some libraries, we're not quite sure how well the NLP works. That's my thought. I don't know if you've done that kind of thinking at all, or whether this is interesting to you.
Very interesting. I don't think we've I think would be probably the summation activity that we've done so far. And we've dabbled in it, but not any further. But that's something that we want to do. And I guess as we grow and as our business develops, all these sorts of insights and knowledge can help us, make a better platform, have projects raise more money, and all those sorts of things. So it's definitely where we want to go.
Fantastic. So in terms of practical steps, if anyone is interested, and there'll be others who watch the YouTube later, if you're able to share those slides, or at least the contact details and those links to the data, I'll share them. And who do you want people to get in touch with if they have questions about this data and this challenge?
Yep.
Is it yourself, Graham, or is it?
Yep. Yeah. If you fire questions into me, then we'll. That'd be great.
Fantastic.
Hopefully we get lots. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is one I'm going to have a go at as well, because I think it's really, really interesting. That's fantastic. Any other questions from the attendees? Go for it, Craig. You're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me is the dashboard is really designed for sort of not as technical types, but for people outside the community, because they want, ideally you'd like to see, like if there's a problem, say at a football match and people miss penalties, and then maybe you'd be interesting to see that suddenly project pledges change. People would be quite interested in that. And so there's going to be a technical issue of just creating the dashboard, but the other issue will be actually usability studies. What do the general public find interesting for visualization? That might be a sort of different community to way people who have a statistics background. So that's either comes a usability. So maybe you might need to do some like A/B testing, where you just try different things out and say, well, this histogram had 50% more hits than the pie chart, or something like that.
I think that's a really good idea. Yeah.
Is this something you've done yourself, Craig, or is it just something that you thought was an important point for this? Is this something you've got experience in?
No, not really. I mean, so I've been thinking about dashboards a little bit because I had to set some of my students a problem on creating a kind of dashboard type thing to fulfill on a module I was teaching. So at some stage I was thinking I should really teach them a bit about usability. So I mean, it wasn't anything as useful this, it was just building a sort of dashboard to a database using Python. But it was using an old, I mean, it was using some kind of GUI widget type thing which runs on the computer, but really you want a kind of web application. So it was a bit old fashioned, but when I was doing it, I think I should really teach people how to make the GUI, you know, appealing and useful. Because I mean, as a user of these things, it infuriates me when they're rubbish, right? I mean, because I spend so much more time clicking on things, going, why they designed it this way?
Yeah. Even looking at things like you know, the Twitter trends or the other social media, they're essentially lists which aren't actually that engaging. So they contain some content, but they don't give you an easy interpretation in terms of relative importance or the trend direction either. They don't give you that information. And I think certainly for me, one of the things I'll be looking into after this, you know, after your presentation, Graham, is some of the charting tools which bring out the trend directions, because a lot of the open source libraries and the web tools are kind of more ideal for snapshots of data rather than visualizing, well, it's here, but it's going in this direction. I think that's a really interesting point. Fantastic. Are there any other questions from the group at all? Fantastic. Okay. So if there aren't any more, we'll kind of bring this one to a close. I'd like to thank Graham and Aaron. Thank you very much for providing the challenge. Please feel free to let other people know that it will be on the YouTube channel for anyone who couldn't make it. And I look forward to hearing what people's ideas and how they get stuck in. And in a couple of months' time, we'll have a catch up with everyone for those who had a go, and hopefully we'll see some interesting ideas kind of emerge. So thanks very much again for contributing a really interesting challenge, and you've kicked off the data challenge in a fantastic fashion. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having us.
So I'll close. Fantastic. So I'll close this meeting, and the next one is at 4:45, and that's a different link. So if you want to join that one, you'll have to click that one. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Cheerio.